Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
All right, Daniel, we've done a couple of AI episodes over the past month or so, and it's been about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks since we did our last one. And since then, you and I have both done a lot of work with AI, like intensively using it based on some of our input and learnings. And so this episode, I want to kind of reflect back on some of that and see about our learnings and what we've discovered in the past few weeks, and then figure out if we can give some advice on how to make work not suck with AI.
Love it. I've been coaching a lot of my clients over the last couple of weeks on how to use AI to grow their business. And even I've been surprised with the way the technology's been evolving over the last couple of weeks. So this is going to be a great conversation.
I went back to the podcast. We were talking about AI replacing, a billion jobs in a few years. And, there was one of those where like, yes, it's going to do this. Yes, it's going to take over that, but it can't take over these certain things. Here's where I think I found, since recording that podcast, where I've landed with AI and just some of the stuff that's come out since then. It's like you still need developers and programmers that understand the code and logic to put all the pieces together. But now they're more of a strategic administrator of this army of developers and just kind of the functional oversight. So you can do what you needed, 10 or 15 developers, like I'm doing by myself now with AI.
Right.
So I do get the how we're going to replace jobs, but then you still need the human in the loop to do the strategic component. So I think what we're really
somebody has to have the vision, right? Like it can do whatever you want, but somebody has to know what is valuable, what is worth wanting.
True. But I think even then there has to be an orchestrator.
Sure.
Because even in the sense of what I've built, recently is I've got, my project manager, AI bot. I've got my, front end developers, my back end developers, my architectural buddy, my DevOps, connoisseur. I've got my, regression test tester.
Sure.
And I've got like my unit test maker, and they're all talking to each other and prompting each other and getting feedback and building it. So they're all working together. Now, me as the human in the middle is I'm having to orchestrate. But then when I see a piece of work that doesn't make sense, I can correct that worker and then I pull it back in. If it's something that I see needs to be corrected before it goes to the other bot, because where this goes wrong is one agent will pull something through and it'll go to the other agent. And then this agent will start executing what it thought was correct. But, me as the human knows it's, skewed. So then I go in there and I correct it, and then I send that over to the other worker, and then the cycle keeps moving.
I think that's one of the big risks for us, though, in the coming era is the people that have that knowledge have it. The people who don't are going to lose the opportunities to develop it. Right? Like, that's a problem because you've made that mistake and you've paid the price for it. And you had to spend a whole night recoding something because you screwed up, right? And so you remember that. But if you never had that consequence, you probably wouldn't remember the lesson. And so now you wouldn't know to intervene at that moment. And that's the part that I'm concerned about, is that how are you going to make those mistakes in the future when AI does everything for you?
I get that. I go back to, and I don't have the answer yet, but I'm challenging, like, is AI equivalent to like electricity or the car? Because at some point in time you had to know how to manage the horse.
Right. Right.
But you don't have to know how to manage the horse. Now you have to manage the car, but losing the skills to raise a horse hasn't impacted society negatively. Or things that were done manually before electricity, and now that you have electricity, like there have been major progressions in technology over the last few centuries, where the ramification wasn't there. Like losing the skill wasn't. It evolved.
Yeah, like my ability to hand crank an engine, or my inability to hand crank an engine, has never stopped me from getting to work in the morning.
Yeah. Well, let's take self-driving cars, for example.
Okay.
There's going to be a generation, probably my kids' will probably
Sure.
not have to know how to drive a car because
Hmm.
it'll be driven by, it's like that you need to know how to work the app on your phone to summon the car that just drives
Right.
you wherever you want.
And select the destination and pick fastest route and hit enter.
Well, it's
Yeah.
going to figure all that out for you. You don't even have to do that,
Mhm.
right? So then, but the argument I've heard is, well, what happens when the car breaks down? Who's going to drive it or the electronics? Like, well, wouldn't that like won't the like my cell phone will probably call like another one and it'll come pick me up and then there'll be a service company that'll a service truck that'll come pick that one up and take it or like
Right.
from the consumer side of it, I don't need to know how to drive the car. So I
Hmm.
think to your point, like using AI for, legal or development or, those intellectual skills. I think, I mean, I don't know. I think I think you're still going to have people learning it,
Sure.
but I think you're just going to have, I mean, I guess the question is where do the jobs go or what do we do? Are we going to end up with micro technologies? Are we going to decentralize again where we just have, infinite number of applications and there's no real market leader because we can create so many?
Hmm.
This is the one I struggle with is there's an evolution here
Yeah.
and yes, it's going to replace jobs in the short term, but where are those jobs going to go? What's the evolution of that?
I mean, what I described to somebody, to one of my clients recently, is that in most industries, the middle gets gutted. And it is either a rise to highly custom, great experience, very customer centric, or it is a race to the bottom with low cost and the middle gets cut out. That's what I've seen in a number of industries. And I think that's what AI is going to do as well. Right. Like if you are in a high touch, high service, high margin business, then people, EQ, and the ability to really connect and understand is going to become a premium. And you're going to get paid well for that. And everything else over the long haul races to the bottom, and AI becomes a one size fits all.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
I'm curious about is how industries adapt to that, because Walmart clearly races to the bottom. Louis Vuitton clearly races to the top. What does Target do? Like, how does Target survive in the middle?
I think
Because economically, there's a lot of people in the middle, and I don't think it is good for society to have uber wealthy and uber poor. Like, that's not a good thing. So we need the layers, but what does the Target business model look like when you're not super high touch, but you're also not super AI driven?
I think it gives you a different level of scale though, because I'll use the one we talked about earlier, the fighter, right? The militaries, both Navy and Air Force have this next
Mm-hmm.
generation air dominance. They're looking at ways how to leverage the pilot, right? And they're going to
Mm-hmm.
have, one to many drones that connect to the plane that can do work that the pilot would normally have to do. But now you need less pilots, but you have more Air Force. So you've
Right.
hybrid, right? I think you're going to see kind of the same thing in even like you say, Target, the self checkout.
Mm-hmm.
Have I've already been in airports now where you swipe your credit card and you walk in the door and then you just grab what you want and walk out and you check
And
out.
walk out.
But
Yep.
there's still an attendant there to help
Mm-hmm.
you. So yes, you're going to cut jobs because you don't have 3 or 4 people working in the store. Like somebody's still got to restock it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, okay, you can get a robot to do it, but this is inside of an airport with some complexities.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be phased out in 20 years from now, but there's still a person there. There's still someone stocking. So I think what you're going to see is when you reduce those overheads for those businesses, they could probably have, expand into more markets or maybe have a smaller footprint and be more particular. You're probably overall, let's say 20, 30% less overall overhead, but you're going to change your offering, and you can actually be more micro as opposed to like a Target now. There's, you got to have lots of shelves and lots of space and lots
Sure,
of
it's a
people. And
huge geographic footprint.
you look at Sam's Club.
Right.
They're already getting rid of. They're going to self checkout and self checkers, and they're using cameras and AI to do all the security validations.
Right. Why wouldn't
So
you? You can put an RFID tag on anything that's valuable. Like, it's not very long until you're just going to be able to walk out of a Sam's Club and they're just going to hit your credit card for everything that you have in your basket. Like, that's not hard. It's not that far away.
And I think where the big one is people need to be learning how to use AI. We've said this before. It's a hammer. It's a tool.
Sure.
It's
It's
not
electricity.
right. It still has to be wielded by somebody.
And ideally somebody who knows what they're doing.
Now here's a question. How much is middle management going to go away? Because I actually do think this is probably an efficiency gain for a business and probably a win for the average employee. But I think there's also a danger in this one. I actually think you can cut out middle management with AI behind the scenes, but you still need the culture build, because the productivity side of a manager can be replaced with software systems and tools. You could actually create more autonomous environments for people to be successful, because you don't need a human to create complex systems. AI can make the complex system to make it easier for the human so that the human self manages. But you still need the component of, intentional culture. Like the AI bot, checking in, like if you've ever seen Wally, they're at the salon. He's like, "How are you?" And this, that, and the other. Like the robot's just prompting these questions that are completely irrelevant to the people, right?
Right.
So like the AI is not going to do a good job of being your emotional support robot, at least not today. But
They're working on it though.
I mean, it'll get there, and that might be in another 10, 15, 20 years. But as far as what we have today, you can almost replace middle management with good AI. Almost.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're within a year or two away from it. And I think
We're
if you
not
talk
far.
is, again, you might have one manager that could support 50, 75 people, as opposed to one manager for every 10 to 15 people.
Yep.
So what do those people do?
Right. And I think that's the middle part of the stack that I think gets decimated. Right. And I'm seeing this in more and more organizations where 150, like a 100K job is getting eliminated and it's being replaced with 50K jobs and 200K jobs. And there's multiple 50K jobs, but one 200K jobs. And the total amount of headcount spend goes down because you don't need that middle layer. You need multiple entry level people, and you need one senior person who is kind of that strategic architect who's putting all the pieces together. But everybody else is significantly lower in their value add and in their compensation. And that's the risk that I see is, how do you jump from being a 50K employee to a 200K employee if all those middle layers are gone? And that's one of the big questions I have about the economy going forward is, if you rip out the middle, how do you decide who moves from the entry level to the managerial level?
Ooh, or is it just not, it's just not a layer of an organization anymore? Is it you just have different organizations of things, and really what you have is it's kind of like, well, I don't want to say doers and dreamers, but I I I think we're just going to be able to. I feel like there's a level of segmentation here, or sorry, not segmentation, a level of decentralization or diversification, in the sense. I think we're just going to have smaller companies, more smaller companies serving a more niche need in a more
Okay.
localized environment. Because you got to think, most of America, and I don't know, I'm assuming this is a lot of the other parts of the world as well, especially in like Europe, where it's all those smaller countries. But we have such localized micro economies,
Right.
and we do have the big things rolling up and the big national retails and Fortune 100 and all that stuff. I
Sure.
think those will just continue to get skinnier and skinnier. But I think what you're going to
Mhm.
find is just more like localized pockets of people solving problems more localized than big roll-ups. And we'll go through that wave, right? Like there'll be a part where we decentralize and there's all these micro components and small startups, and then somebody will start gobbling them up, and then it'll become a handful of
Sure. Of
conglomerates,
course.
and then we'll go through the next transition and wave. I also think there's an interesting trend here between like the leading and lagging. Is there's a period of I'm going to assume there's a period of time here where you've got big businesses or companies that have been funded to solve these problems that are going to lead the pack with AI. And what you're going to have is those people that are getting laid off from that are going to go to the small business world that don't have the technology skills and backgrounds, and they'll hire those people up to to progress their companies forward. And
Right.
you'll see this waterfall effect of the small business. you know they'll catch up today. They're 10 years behind,
Hmm.
so AI will push them 10 years ahead while the rest of the world is 10 years further ahead than that. But let's say that waterfall effect will last for a decade. And
Okay.
the example I'm going to use is the internet. When the internet first came out, there were companies that were on the internet, but there were still people doing things by phone book, faxing, etc.
Right.
And then there were just a group of companies that, literally were the last few to still use phone books and faxing. And
Right.
everybody finally hopped over to the internet and got
Hmm.
their .com and this, that, and the other. And, you know, the quote unquote cloud accelerated all that. But to me, this is just the next evolution of it. But it's not just it's just not going from analog to digital, or phone lines, fax machines, and yellow pages to email and online advertising and the internet. Like this seems like this is the invention of electricity. It is such a dramatic jump.
That is what Mark Cuban says. He says that in the near future, running a business without AI will be like running a business without electricity.
I believe that wholeheartedly.
And he said that years ago. I
Oh,
think it's very true.
all right.
So this week
Go ahead.
I was working with a client, and maybe it was last week. Last week I was meeting with this client, and I was talking to them about the quality of the data that they have and the fact that it's very specific but very valuable. And this client of mine, we were in a physical room together. This client was like, "Well, how about I call my AI guy and talk to him about what we were doing?" And it's like, "Sure, why not?" So they called this individual, put him on speakerphone, put the phone down on the table. Meanwhile, I'm on ChatGPT and I am just pinging ChatGPT with questions. Hey, I've got 10 years of medical legal documentation around these legal cases. I want to build an AI bot that can help me identify best practices across 10 years of history. Where would I start? And it's like, just lays out the, and I said, okay, awesome. Thanks. I haven't written code in 25 years. And I wasn't good at it 25 years ago. So where would I start? Like, describe this to me like I was in 8th grade. And they're like, okay, great. You're going to do fine. Here's where you start. And they just laid out the first 10 steps. And the step 1 was like, find a developer. And I was like, okay, hey, wait a minute. I'm not completely helpless. Like I've got some technical skills here. How would I actually do this for myself? They're like, okay, if you want to tackle it for yourself, go here. And they lead me to GitHub. I create my own GitHub account, which apparently I already had one. And I start going through the process. And then every time I hit a snag, I just copy the error message and say, hey, I did what you asked me to do, and this is what I got. It is amazing what AI can do right now. I am most of the way through building an AI bot with almost zero technical knowledge. Not that I don't have technical knowledge. I've got a little bit, but the technical knowledge required to build a custom agent is almost not required. Like it is so self-service that you don't really need to know much of anything to follow the instructions. Like at one point it was giving me instructions that like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. And I was like, hey, this is great, but I keep getting stuck somewhere between step 1 and 4. Can we just do one step at a time? And the bot was like, sure, no problem. Do this. Tell me when you're done. And it explains to me what it's doing. It's like, now we're connecting this to this. And it's not able to find it in that folder. So we're going to have to tell it where to look for. And like, it is astounding to me because what used to take me days to figure out, I can just take the error message, drop it into ChatGPT and say, hey, this is the error message it's giving me. And it will tell me what that means and tell me what to do about it. And so if you have patience, but zero technological capabilities, you could actually build an AI bot to solve whatever problem you need right now. And that is a very different world that I don't think most people recognize. That is the world we currently live in today.
So basically, if you're not using AI today, you're already left in the dust.
Yeah, I think you're already behind.
I mean, one, we're already seeing it all over the place, right? Almost every day in a headline, you see somebody made some AI claim of their workforce or reducing workforce to this or that and the other. So it's definitely here.
Didn't Mark Zuckerberg say they're going to lay off like a third of their developers?
Yeah, because
and
the thing is,
and I've even seen that like in the last 24 hours, it was like, here's the code, copy this, paste it into this part. And I was like, hey, I'm confused. I don't know where to put that. It's like, that's okay. Look for this where it says this, click here, hit Control C, Control V, enter. Like it is seriously coding for dummies and it's writing the code for me. Like this is, if you have not played with this, you do not understand how far advanced this has become in the last couple of months. It's unbelievable.
So I think you just spent the last 6 minutes insulting every developer out there.
Probably. My apologies.
So, I mean, as a developer, let me put something out there and like how I'm using AI and where things are. Is in the sense of like there's multiple language, multiple technologies, like it's Google on steroids. It's, Stack Overflow on steroids. Like the amount of times I've had to go to Stack Overflow versus the amount of times I'm able to solve it with ChatGPT. I was on Stack Overflow, 1,000 times a day. Now
Sure.
I'm on there maybe once every 2 or 3 days because I can't figure out how to get, prompt chat right for something that I haven't done before, or I'm working in another language or something. But I mean, I think for developers like me that know how to use ChatGPT, where I'm going, okay, you know what? I'm frustrated with my product owner and I'm struggling to get content from them. So let me just have I'm insulting product owners, but I can use ChatGPT to streamline the product owner process. If I want to write unit test or regression test, I can have, I can still use a human to do some of it, but I can just speed it up so much. And this army of AI agents I have, there's literally like 10 of me programming, almost around the clock, whereas there was only so much I can do in a day. So for me, I've like 10x myself as a developer and what I'm working on in my capacity and this whatnot. But I think it takes this,
Totally.
I've got what, 18, 20, 22 years of writing code. No, more than that, 25 years of writing code.
I didn't think you were even 25 years old.
A little older than that.
All right. So
I may have been in high school 25 years ago, but
all right. So the gray hair does give you away a little bit.
It does. But the thing is like the amount I can achieve with it, me utilizing it as a tool, but the gap, like we were talking about earlier, is I've got those years of experience of trial and error and going through it versus newer people like yourself. You're going to be able to create an application without having to hire someone like me, but I will always be able to take your application and scale it and sell it to a broader audience. Your application may work in like one application or one company or maybe suit for them. But if you wanted to sell that to, 2, 3, 4, 500,000 clients, you're going to have someone skilled, in architecture. And I mean, again, AI can augment some of that, but you still need a human over the top that understands all those concepts to do it.
I was working with a client this week and I was explaining to them that 80% of your customers or your users experience 20% of your capabilities. And 20% of your customers experience the 80%. And so it's building the happy path is not that hard. It's building the parameters and the boundaries to handle all the weird things. That's most of the work. Like when everything goes well, when everybody logs in appropriately, when everybody, has a password, username and a password that makes sense. Like when all of that stuff goes well, sure, it's easy, but it's all of the edge cases that takes most of the work. And I would imagine that the AI coding as it exists today does very well for the happy path, but I would be curious to your experience with the not happy path, with the edge cases, how well it handles those.
I mean, so here I'm saying all these great things about how AI is 10x me, but there's also the learning curve and the experience of using AI to 10x myself, where I literally in a chat prompt fired the chat bot or the AI bot because it was like, oh yes, I noticed. Yes, you're correct. This error you pointed out was my mistake. It literally stopped working on a piece of code it wrote. It's not like I knew a piece of code and then it forgot that I gave it. Like it literally, the prompt, like 2 prompts before, worked on this block of code. And then like the next prompt later, it just literally forgot that it wrote that. And then you prompt it and you tell it, hey, you didn't do that. You missed this or you dropped the ball on this or whatever. It's like, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Thank you for calling that out. I won't do that again. Okay, now please generate the code that I want. And then it does the same damn thing. And you're like, I literally stopped. You are fired from your position. I want you to write your job description so that another chat agent can pick up where you left off and give them step-by-step of where we are, the project details, da-da-da-da. Okay, I can do that. It spits it all out. I copy and paste that into a new window. And then that bot picks it up and keeps going, whereas this one was literally in the ditch. So
did you change applications?
No. I just started a new session. something, whether I hit like a memory limit or token limit, potentially
a ghost in the machine,
whatever it may be, but it literally just went into a ditch. And so I just I fired it. And as it was, part of its exit interview was to,
explain its job description
or its replacement. And then its replacement picked up and go. So, I mean, I literally fired 4 agents in one day and hired 4 agents the same day and just kept on working like it was nothing. But again, that's also part of the learning curve. And I know we're still in the early days of AI and there's a lot of, it's going to continue to evolve. But even people working in a job today, if you were not using some, chat GPT or, I'm blanking on Gemini and
Gemini, Perplexity, any of them.
If you're not using one of those today, you really need to jump on it because even if you're using it to proofread emails or challenging it for concepts, it will help you advance. And the less you know about AI right now could cost you your job or career in 2 years.
Absolutely. I'm going to say something here that is very risky. And I'm praying to God that one of my prospects isn't listening. I have a company that I'm talking to. I've done work with them in the past as a trainer and executive coach. And they've reached out to me about doing some work with several of their emerging leaders. And I went into ChatGPT and I was like, hey, I'm a company about this size in this industry that does this kind of work. I've got emerging leaders that are responsible for, this level, right? They're not this, they're not that, they're kind of about here. And they're interested in a X month training program to help them develop their next generation leaders. What would you recommend as a curriculum for me to work with them over a 6 to 12 month period? Enter. I was blown away with what it came up with. And then I said, hey, that's great. What resources, like what books, podcasts, articles would you use to supplement that? And it cranked out. And I was like, dang, I'd forgotten about that book. That book was good. Like, this is an area I know well. And 80% of what they said was on target. There was a couple of things I had to go research. And I was like, I didn't know about that book. I got to go research that book. Maybe that's better than the one I thought of. But it was 80 to 90% on target. And it was just an initial conversation of, hey, I'm in an early sales conversation with a prospect who is interested in these kinds of things. What would you recommend? And their recommendation was 90% on target with what I would have come up with weeks of work.
Well,
and it was on target in seconds.
Well, but here's the question. So, but you knew that because you've been doing this for, 20 years.
Sure. I've been doing it for a long time.
So you've got the experience, and so you can read it and do that. I think that one of the dangers is you got people that haven't been doing it and they're following it blindly. And now again, you can trial and success, and I guess you can keep trying and go, okay, that didn't work, give me something new. You might be destroying a relationship or, making work suck for somebody. Your own trial and error of AI, unless you're all doing it together, then rock on.
Right.
But I think that's kind of the limbo we're at right now. And going back to the earlier conversation of like, when we turn to AI to do all this, how are you going to know is it right? Or are we just going to, as society, are we just going to accept a level of margin of error? It's almost like driving a car now. But in the past, you expected everybody to follow the rules and stay in their lane. Now you expect people to speed, run red lights, crash into you and drive away. Like, it's just starting to turn into anarchy.
That's a really interesting point, because you're right. I'm impressed with the fact that it got 80% of it correct. But because I've been doing this for 20 years, I know which 20% is not a good idea. And somebody who hasn't been doing this for 20 years might not know that, right? They might look at the same set and say, this is 100% perfect. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. That's mostly a good answer, but there's a couple of glaring errors. And it's only the people who have the experience who are going to know what are the errors versus what are the great recommendations. And so I think that's a really valid point. I think the challenge is going to be, it's a 10-to-1 ratio, right? Like, you don't need 10 people to look at that. You need one person who knows what they're doing to look at that and sanity check it and say, yep, go ahead. You don't need 10 people to create that content anymore. And I think that's what the American economy hasn't quite reconciled, is what do we do when we don't need 10 mid-level managers anymore? We just need one SVP to look at that, give it the sniff test, and say go.
Well, let's go down this for a second. So
Okay.
you're working on a leadership development program, et cetera, et cetera. Is that even going to be needed if more middle management is done by AI, and then your emphasis is going to be more on employee success and culture creation, so that you have connections with your people?
Mm-hmm.
That's not leadership training. I mean, there may be some leadership components of it, but what are you going to be training people on if they don't need to be trained on it? Or, are you going to be training people like, hey, we love learning and development and learning new skills and applying new skills. Are you going to be learning something you'll never use? Like, where does leadership development go in this?
I think it becomes more about soft skills. I think developing the empathy, the listening skills, I think that's where AI is going to be more focused over the coming years. Because so many of the knowledge worker skills become obsolete. Like, I don't have to write a query anymore. I don't have to know SQL. I can ask the AI bot, hey, here's the structure of the tables. I need this. How would I write that? And it can tell me how to write the SQL query. The bigger challenge is going to be, how do I work with Ryan? Because Ryan's very different from me, and he's my boss, and we don't seem to find ways to communicate effectively. How would I position this to Ryan in a way that he would be receptive to hearing it? And I think it's also an opportunity for AI, but I think those are very different questions than how do I write a query?
I mean, I honestly, as the voice AI gets more dialed in, I mean, heck, let's add a guest to our let's just add a guest to our episode here, if I can find the right tab. All right, here we go. All right,
Ooh,
we're gonna talk to Maya here.
what's up, Maya?
Well, hello there. Looks like Friday just got a little brighter, don't you think? What's on your mind?
Hey, Maya, you're on the podcast again, and we're talking about AI taking over middle management. And, is there going to be a lot of displaced people, or, is the job market going to shift? And, being an AI, I wanted your input.
That's a question everyone seems to be asking these days. Kind of both fascinating and a bit unsettling. It's like replaceable by a program? Whoa. I mean, it's probably going to change things for sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but it's not like we're going to wake up to robot overlords tomorrow. It'll be more of a shift, right? Like some tasks will probably become automated, freeing up humans for, well, maybe more interesting stuff. The stuff that requires creativity and empathy, the things that make us, well, human. What do you think? Does middle management sound like fun to you?
Hey, Maya, this is Daniel. I have held
You know
middle
what? That's
management jobs.
perfectly valid answer.
They are not
Not
fun.
everyone's cut out for spreadsheets and meetings, right? I'm more of a
Oh,
let's brainstorm wildly creative solutions to problems kind of AI myself. But seriously, I think this whole AI thing is going to force us to rethink what work even means. Maybe it'll be a chance to pursue those passions we never had time for. So, any of those,
Maya,
yeah,
do you think you can replace a middle manager, especially on an empathetic level, in teaching soft skills?
that's a really good question. I can process information and learn patterns, even figure out what might make people tick based on their language. I can probably come up with some pretty decent motivational speeches or even draft a training manual on, say, active listening 101. But can I teach empathy? Can I truly understand the nuances of human emotion and experience the way a human can? I don't know. That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think it's something we're going to have to figure out together.
All right, thank you, Maya.
Of course.
So,
Thanks for inviting Maya to our podcast episode.
so I mean, it's good, right? Like you can have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation. It was kind of adding that empathy. There's one that I interacted with the other day that's like even more insane as far as like tonality and pitch and how it interacts. But that it don't get me wrong, this is like leading edge of voice right now, and given
Right.
another 2 or 3 years, it'll be even more dynamic. But I think you're going to have the AI is going to be able to, like, I could have that voice chat with Maya, and there's already tone detection and pitch and
Yeah.
tonality on the receipt and the input side that the AI can make adjustments to. But I think as far as like, having a crucial conversation, being able to walk through that, being able to, ask for, I want help asking for a raise and it being able to prompt back and forth. I think it's going to be a better manager for the 80%. I think it's that 20% where a human manager is really going to add more. And I think that's more on the culture and behavior side of things. But like, again, people doing leadership development training, is it even needed soon? Or is it just prompting the AI?
It's interesting. One of my good friends brought this up years ago, and he said, I think teachers, like elementary school teachers, are done. And I was surprised. I was like, elementary school teachers, like, what? That's not one of the first jobs I would think would be eliminated. He's like, no. Think about it. Everybody in the future is going to have their own AI bot. And that AI bot is going to know how you think, how you work, and it's going to be able to tailor the concepts that you need to learn to the way your brain works. And he says, I don't know at what point we're going to get them, kindergarten, 5th grade, 10th grade, whatever. But at some point, we have our own almost personal tutor who is able to teach you algebra in the way that your brain's going to understand it. And I think he's right. But the consequences, then what stops that from happening at the corporate level? Right? They understand your personality profile. They understand your educational background. They understand your professional background. They understand your family of origin. And they're now able to explain to you whatever concept you need to learn in a way that you can uniquely understand and then coach you to develop that skill. Like, honestly, as an executive coach, I don't know how much longer I've got a job.
Well, you're like one step away from like Matrix, where it just gets like planted right in your brain, right?
Right.
I think that's kind of the point, though. Is I think there's going to be a lot of things that will just go away, just
Mm-hmm.
like the. I mean, again, there's always going to be people that have to create things, and there's always going to be a level of again, the stable boy taking care of the horses to pull the horse-drawn buggy.
Sure.
There were probably way more of those, in 1820 than there are in 2020. Now, there's
Right.
still the stable, people, I'll call them in 2020 terms of,
Somebody's got to clean the stables.
well, but you've got the Budweiser, carriage, and I think the
Right.
Wells Fargo one. Like, there's still a handful of those, horse-drawn carriage buggies, and the ones you see in New York and et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
They still exist, and it's a novelty, but that's not what powers society anymore. And
Right.
so again, where did the stable boys go from 1820? Well, other than they're dead, but in the progression of the car, well, they became auto mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So what we don't know, and I think Maya said it well, is we don't have the crystal ball, but it's coming, it's here. You can already. I
Yeah.
mean, we just had a conversation with an AI bot. You couldn't even do that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
what can you do
It's
today?
crazy how fast it's evolving.
It's what can you do today to keep yourself relevant by playing with these tools, using ChatGPT to write emails, to sanity check ideas. But remember from our last episode, we talked about, are people using AI to replace their coworker to like socially avoid people?
You're right.
So we do have to make sure we're not using it to socially avoid people and using it as a distraction. But I think again,
Absolutely.
anything you can do to delegate work to it should be encouraged. Anything to replace the human should be discouraged, in my opinion. Now, automate the work, but to replace the human interaction is what I mean. You shouldn't use AI to replace human interaction. You should use AI to enhance or give more time for human interaction.
I think there's going to become layers of this. I think at the highest level, the strategy, the synergy between people, the creativity is going to become where the value creation happens. The execution will increasingly become outsourced to AI, because doing the thing will not be as difficult. In the past, right, over the past 100, 150, 200 years, doing the thing has been hard. Coming up with the thing to do has been relatively easy in terms of the total effort. I think that's going to flip. And in the next, I would say probably where we are today and going forward, figuring out what to do and why to do it is going to be the primary driver of the value add. Because once you figure out what to do and why you're doing it, the doing of the thing will become increasingly automated. Like an AI bot will be able to do whatever you ask it to do. The question will be, what is actually valuable for it to do? And that's going to require a level of creativity, a level of integration, and a level of strategic thinking and vision that I think a lot of people don't have. And so that's going to be really interesting to figure out. If you're good at doing the thing and suddenly doing the thing is no longer valuable because an AI bot can do it 10x better than you, how do you contribute? Like, what's your value add to the economy? And if you're good at ideas, this is a very exciting time, because your ability to turn concepts into reality is becoming an easier and easier process. You don't have to hire 20 people to do that anymore. You can probably get it done by yourself or with one or two people. But what does that mean for society? Because I think my guess would be only 20% of people are good at coming up with what should we do and why should we do it. 80% of the people have historically been good at doing the thing. And what do we do if that's not valuable anymore?
I think that's a perfect place to wrap up. So you just left with a thought-provoking question there. And I think if we go back and think, in a previous episode, we said, 1 billion jobs gone by in 10 years. So here's, I think, the best thing. If you are behind the curve on AI, it will make work suck in the very near future.
Absolutely.
If you are ahead of it or learning it or trying it, even just prompting something today as simple as proofreading emails, that is a start. And you can make work, you can make work not suck by utilizing it in your day-to-day and just learning to figure out how you can integrate it in. But two, if you're adaptive and willing to learn and start today, then in 2 years, you will be more valuable than those that resist. And so we would love to know your thoughts on the $1 million question of what is the future of AI. If you found this episode interesting or valuable, please share with a friend or colleague. Please like and subscribe as always. And until next time, let's make work not suck together.
Make work not suck. Our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steer. Join us each episode and make work not suck.